your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at yoursarthi@such.org.in.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shival Jarna.
And I'm Hem Korsaro. And on the show today, a recent opinion poll shows Kamala Harris taking a marginal lead over Republican rival Donald Trump. Harris gave a 17-minute speech in her first campaign rally since replacing President Joe Biden as the potential Democratic presidential nominee. She aggressively went after Trump's vulnerabilities, comparing her background as a former prosecutor to his record as a convicted felon. We'll get you all the details of this on the show today.
Also on the show, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is in the US and scheduled to address a joint session of the Congress on Wednesday, making him the only foreign leader to do so for the fourth time. He will also meet President Joe Biden on Thursday and will separately meet Vice President Kamala Harris. A meeting with Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump is also scheduled, and that is going to happen later in the week. We are going to be tracking all those developments closely for you. Let's get started with the headlines.
Kamala Harris assails Donald Trump at her first campaign rally since replacing Joe Biden as Democratic presidential candidate, while an opinion poll shows her taking a marginal lead over Trump.
Donald Trump says he will meet Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at his Mar-a-Lago residence in Florida on Friday. Netanyahu is in Washington to address the joint session of US Congress today.
US Senator Bob Menendez resigns after his conviction on corruption charges, which included bribery and acting as an agent for Egypt's government, bows to pressure from fellow Democrats to give up the job.
UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy makes his first trip to India today, expected to push for a reset in bilateral partnership and free trade agreement in his meeting with Indian counterpart Dr. S. Jaishankar.
Jailed former Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan refuses to undergo polygraph and voice matching test as part of a probe in connection with last year's violence in the country.
Taiwan braces for arrival of Typhoon Gemi, shutting the financial markets, schools and offices for the day. Flights have been cancelled and military has been put on standby.
Britain's joint most decorated female Olympian Charlotte pulls out of the Paris Olympics. The equestrian governing body suspends her for 6 months over allegations that she whipped a horse 24 times. All right, US Vice President Kamala Harris assailed Donald Trump at her first campaign rally, this after replacing President Joe Biden as the potential Democratic presidential nominee.
Now, Harris started her campaign trail with an event in the crucial battleground state of Wisconsin. She told a cheering crowd in Milwaukee that she knew Donald Trump's type, quote unquote, and compared her background as a former prosecutor to his record as a convicted felon.
Before I was elected vice president, before I was elected United States Senator, I was elected Attorney General of the state of California, and I was a courtroom prosecutor before then. And in those roles, I took on perpetrators of all kinds. Predators who abused women, fraudsters who ripped off consumers, cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type.
Harris centered her speech around a list of liberal priorities, including expanding abortion access, making it easier for workers to join unions, and addressing gun violence. The Democratic nominee emphasized her commitment to reproductive rights. The issue has plagued Republicans since the nationwide right to abortion was eliminated in 2022 by 3 Trump-appointed justices in the Supreme Court.
What kind of country do we want to live in? A country, and to your point, do we want to live in a country of freedom, compassion, and rule of law, or a country of chaos, fear, and hate?
The rally has renewed hope in the blue camp that Harris can revive what had been a flagging campaign under Biden. She has swiftly consolidated her party's support as she began her campaign. Harris received complete support of the Congressional Black Caucus.
Her record of delivering for all Americans is exactly why she has the full and unanimous support of the Congressional Black Caucus.
The top 2 U.S. Democratic congressional leaders have also endorsed the vice president. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, House of Representatives Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries have joined the growing number of Democrats supporting Harris's bid for nomination.
Joe Biden is a great American.
She said she would work to earn the support of our party, and boy, has she done so in quick order. Vice President Harris has done a truly impressive job securing the majority of delegates needed to win the Democratic Party's nomination to be our next president of the United States. The vast majority of my senators quickly and enthusiastically endorsed her. So now that the process is played out, from the grassroots bottom up, we are here today to throw our support behind Vice President Kamala Harris.
Meanwhile, a Reuters Ipsos opinion poll shows Harris taking a marginal lead over her rival Donald Trump. As for the poll, after taking over the nomination, Harris leads Trump 44% to 42% among registered voters. A week before Biden's exit, Harris and Trump tied at 44%, and at the beginning of the month, Trump was ahead by a percentage point.
The results signal slight movement in the Democrats' direction. They will now look to capitalize on the gains and curb the momentum that Trump's campaign has gained in the past few days.
The director of the Secret Service, Kimberly Cheatle, has resigned from her job following the assassination attempt against former President Donald Trump.
Right, Kimberly Cheatle has served as the Secret Service Director since August 2022. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas said that the Secret Service Deputy Director, Ronald Rowe, a 24-year veteran of the agency, will now serve as the acting director.
U.S. President Joe Biden thanked Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheatle for her service. Biden said that he would appoint a successor soon. U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson also reacted to the resignation. He said that the Secret Service Director's resignation was overdue.
In our press conference, I'm glad she did the right thing. Look, our reaction, the immediate reaction to her resignation is that it is overdue. She should have done this at least a week ago. I'm happy to see that. I'm happy to see that she has heeded the call of both Republicans and Democrats.
Somehow I feel it.
Director Kimberly Cheatle has resigned after her agency came under intense scrutiny for failing to prevent an assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. That's according to the White House on Tuesday.
It is my firm belief, Director Cheatle, that you should resign.
It comes after Cheadle faced bipartisan condemnation before the House of Representatives Oversight Committee on Monday, where she declined to answer questions from frustrated lawmakers about the security plan for the rally and how law enforcement responded to the suspicious behavior of the gunman.
I don't want to add to the director's terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day, but I will be joining the chairman in calling for the resignation of the director, just because I think that this relationship is irretrievable at this point.
President Joe Biden said in a statement that the independent review of July 13th would continue and that he would appoint a successor soon. The agency did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Representative James Comer, chair of the House Oversight Committee, said in a statement, "While Director Cheadle's resignation is a step toward accountability, we need a full review of how these security failures happened so that we can prevent them going forward." A would-be assassin wounded Trump during a campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, July 13th, after firing shots from a nearby roof. The shooter was killed by police after he killed one person and injured two others in addition to Trump.
Now for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani has sent us this report with the latest from New York. Listen to this.
Pennsylvania State Police Commissioner Christopher Harris testified before the House Homeland Security Committee, revealing new details about the security failures that led to the near assassination of former President Donald Trump. Harris described a timeline of events, including how local law enforcement initially spotted Thomas Matthew Crooks and alerted Secret Service. However, two local law enforcement officers abandoned their posts, which had a clear view of the roof where Crooks took aim, to search for him elsewhere. Harris also stated that several Secret Service agents told local police that they were the ones responsible for securing the building where Crooks fired shots. Additionally, a municipal officer had a brief confrontation with Crooks before the shooting, but was forced to retreat when Crooks aimed his rifle. Harris highlighted communication failures and misunderstandings among law enforcement agencies, including a text thread about Crooks' suspicious behavior, and one that was relayed to the Secret Service. The testimony raises further questions about the Secret Service's handling of the event that day and its ability to protect former President Donald Trump. The Secret Service now has a new acting director, Robert Rowe Jr., following the resignation of Kimberly Cheadle. Cheadle faced intense criticism for the agency's failure in the near assassination attempt against former President Donald Trump at a campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. Rowe, a 24-year veteran of the Secret Service, will lead the agency while the Biden administration searches for a new director. Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas has expressed confidence in Rowe's ability to lead the agency during these, quote, challenging times. Rowe has previously served in various positions within the Secret Service. The agency continues to be under intense scrutiny for its failure of protecting Donald Trump. Rowe will be responsible for overseeing the investigation and implementing changes to hopefully prevent similar incidents from happening in the future.
Now, former U.S. President Donald Trump will host Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at his Palm Beach resort in Florida later this week.
Now, this comes as Netanyahu arrived in Washington on Monday for a multi-day visit. The meeting with Trump, which was originally slated for Wednesday, has been shifted to Friday. And of course, Netanyahu hasn't met the US president yet, so I guess he would need to meet the president before he meets Donald Trump. The Republican presidential candidate announced this on Truth Social, that the postponement comes following a request from the Israeli leader.
Now, of course, as Shivan mentioned before that, the Israeli Prime Minister, is scheduled to address a joint session of the Congress on Wednesday. This will make him only the fourth foreign leader to do so, and he will also meet President Joe Biden on Thursday, and will separately meet Vice President Kamala Harris.
As per standard protocol, the Vice President is supposed to preside over the Congress address of the Israeli leader. However, she is expected to miss the session over an official trip. The Senate next in line to fulfill the role, Patty Murray, has declined to attend over the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. This comes as various Democrats have announced that boycotting of the Congress session.
and have encouraged Netanyahu.
Mr. President, I come to the floor today as a strong supporter of the U.S.-Israel relationship to talk about why it was such a big mistake to invite Prime Minister Netanyahu to address a joint session of Congress, and why I will not attend his speech tomorrow.
Groups of Democrat senators have confirmed that they will not attend the session and will instead spend that time to meet with the families of hostages.
This comes as the bereaved families are staging protests across locations in Washington. Jewish protesters took to the Capitol Hill to demand a ceasefire. These protests are expected to continue and even become bigger until the Israeli Prime Minister's Congress address.
That's why I'm here today, protesting the genocide of the Palestinian people and calling on our government to enact an arms embargo on Israel and send no more weapons to the Israeli military.
Even at home in Tel Aviv, hundreds marched to the Defense Ministry on Tuesday demanding a ceasefire ahead of Prime Minister's Congress address.
Tomorrow, my Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, is going to have his speech in front of the Congress, and I'm really hopeful that tomorrow he's going to make us all feel whole again and tell us that the deal is taking place and that in the next week or two we are going to see our loved ones back with us.
Yemen's Houthi rebels have released a footage showing what they say is the Yafa drone that they used in an attack on Tel Aviv on the 19th of July.
And at least one person was killed and 10 injured after the long-range rocket that Israel said was made in Iran hit an apartment building. The group said in a statement that the Yafa drone is capable of performing multiple tasks and its systems make it invisible to the enemy radar and air defenses. The footage shows the drone carrying a highly explosive warhead.
Israeli forces struck Yemen's rebel-held Hodeidah port in retaliation to the attack on Tel Aviv, damaging oil storage facilities and setting tankers ablaze. At least 6 people were killed and 80 others were injured in the attack.
This attack will not go unanswered. We will strike back. Our Navy, air and drone forces will respond forcefully.
Now, the Yafa drone launched by Houthis breached Israeli airspace, evaded the Iron Dome and rained shards of shrapnel over a large radius in the civilian area. It dodged the multi-layer air defense systems and it did not trigger the air raid alarms. Houthi spokesperson Yahya Saree said in a statement that the drones and the missiles are launched from Yemen towards Israel in retaliation for war in Gaza.
The attack by the Houthis on Tel Aviv came hours after the Israeli military said that its forces killed a senior commander of the Lebanon-based Hezbollah militia. Israeli chief spokesperson Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari confirmed that the drone hit a building in proximity to the U.S. Embassy office. Israel described the UAV as an upgraded Iranian-made Samad 3 model capable of long-range flight.
Since the onslaught of the Gaza war, the Houthis have been attacking the commercial shipping in Red Sea and Gulf of Aden that is either Israeli-owned, flagged, operated or is headed for Israeli ports.
They say that these attacks are in solidarity with the Gaza Strip, where more than 39,000 people, civilians, have been killed since Israel launched its military offensive against Hamas last year.
And Slovakia just got a delivery of 2 US-made F-16 Falcons.
Considered the hotcakes of fighter jets, those are these Falcons. Now, the government of the NATO and EU member nation has called it a huge boost to defense capabilities. The new F-16s will replace the aging fleet of Russian MiG-29s, which were grounded due to lack of parts and maintenance after the Russia-Ukraine war started. The deal for 14 F-16s worth $1.6 billion was signed in 2018. Slovakia is scheduled to receive the 12 remaining F-16 jets in the next 2 years. The F-16 is a key component of NATO's plan to ramp up its defense capabilities on the eastern flank. And Poland is modernizing its existing fleet of F-16s. Romania got the Falcons from Norway, which is gradually phasing them out. And Bulgaria is scheduled to receive F-16s by 2025 as part of a $1.3 billion deal.
US Secretary of State Antony Blinken had said at the NATO summit earlier this month that the transfer of F-16s to Ukraine is underway. Belgium, Norway and Denmark have also pledged to donate F-16s to Ukraine by the end of this year. Now, the thawing Arctic, it's rapidly transforming from a pristine wilderness into a geopolitical battleground.
Well, Russia and China, locked in an icy embrace of cooperation, are aggressively staking their claims to the region. Watch this next story on how this partnership is forcing Pentagon to rejig its plans in the Arctic. Take a look.
The Arctic, once an impenetrable fortress of ice, is transforming into a hotbed of international competition. As global warming thaws the frozen north, it's unveiling not just new shipping lanes and untapped resources, but also a theatre for strategic maneuvering that has caught the attention of the world's superpowers. The Pentagon's latest report highlights the increasing cooperation between Russia and China in the Arctic and its potential implications for regional stability. Russia has revitalized numerous Soviet-era military installations in the Arctic, while China, self-described as a near-Arctic state, is ambitiously advancing its Polar Silk Road initiative. This plan aims to exploit mineral resources and new shipping pathways revealed by retreating ice. This has forced Pentagon to alter its Arctic strategy.
Our Arctic strategy will guide the department's efforts to ensure that the Arctic remains a secure and stable region. And now is a critical time in the region. Climate change is fundamentally altering the Arctic, and with it, geopolitics and U.S. defense missions.
Western governments have long been wary of China's Arctic ambitions, fearing its expanding economic footprint might translate into political leverage and a potential security presence that could compound the existing challenges posed by Russia. Moscow says Russian Arctic cooperation with China is not aimed at anyone amid US concerns. Echoing the statement, Beijing condemned Pentagon's report as irresponsible remarks.
The US has misinterpreted China's Arctic policy and made irresponsible remarks on China's normal Arctic activities in accordance with international law, which is not conducive to peace, stability and cooperation in the Arctic. China is firmly opposed to that.
As this new Cold War unfolds in the world's coldest region, the stakes couldn't be higher for the Arctic's strategic importance in global security, commerce, and climate change mitigation. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
And with that, it's time now for a short break.
Don't go anywhere. Of course, this is World DNA. We will be back after the break. On the other side, we bring you a complete report on the Indian Supreme Court as it rules NEET UG 2024 results will stand and there will be no retest. A special bench led by Chief Justice of India found no evidence to prove that the entire exam was compromised.
Also on the other side, Chinese scientists produce an ultra-thin semiconductor material, a development that can lead to faster and more energy-efficient microchips.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
Faster, higher, stronger. Words that mean so much on a sporting pitch every 4 years.
ओलंपिक मेडल ने मुझे ये सिखाया कि किस तरीके से अपने आप को संभालना है.
The world's best sporting talents are assembling in Paris later this month. The quest for an Olympic medal is sport's greatest pursuit.
I think people are looking at the Olympics with a lot of hope. More than 200 countries all coming together.
The Olympic Games return to the French capital after a century.
There's not really any cities that compare to it.
Catch all the build-up to the Paris Games on WION World is One.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. Everyone loves a contest. But sport isn't just about victory and defeat. When the GOATs in sport speak, you hear it first on WION.
You have to play good cricket over a period of time.
I should push myself right out of the damn tournament.
We go beyond the stats. Our stories are quoted the world over.
At WION, sport is part of our DNA. Come, join us on this journey. Weekdays 6:30 p.m. IST, 1 p.m. GMT.
WION, India's global voice. The channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is One.
Know more, understand better, think ahead. Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Get the facts, not the bombast. On the 26th of March, dynamic pricing, Baloch separatists, Gravitas cuts out the clutter. Gravitas keeps calm when others scream. Gravitas brings news to life. Weekdays 9 p.m. IST, 3:30 p.m. GMT. Gravitas. Seeing is believing.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching World DNA with Haim and me, Shivan. Let's get started with the headlines we're tracking for you at this hour.
Relatives of Gaza hostages protest near Capitol building in Washington, D.C., urging Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to finalize deal to bring them home on the eve of Netanyahu's speech to the U.S. Congress today.
So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type.
Kamala Harris assails Donald Trump at her first campaign rally since replacing Joe Biden as Democratic presidential candidate, while an opinion poll shows her taking a marginal lead over Trump.
U.S. Senator Bob Menendez resigns after his conviction on corruption charges, which included bribery and acting as an agent for Egypt's government, bows to pressure from fellow Democrats to give up job.
UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy makes his first trip to India today, expected to push for reset of bilateral partnership and free trade agreement in his meeting with Indian counterpart Dr. S. Jaishankar.
Jailed former Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan refuses to undergo polygraph and voice matching test as part of a probe in connection with last year's violence in the country.
Taiwan braces for arrival of Typhoon Gemi, shutting the financial market, schools and offices for the day. Flights have been cancelled and military has been put on standby.
Britain's joint most decorated female Olympian Charlotte Loughran pulls out of the Paris Olympics. The equestrian governing body suspends her for 6 months over allegations that she whipped a horse 24 times. UK's Foreign Secretary David Lammy is arriving in capital New Delhi, making his first trip to India.
Well, his visit will focus on reinforcing UK's commitment to securing a free trade agreement with the country. Now, Lammy will meet his counterpart, External Affairs Minister of India, Dr. S. Jaishankar, during his visit. This will be the first visit to India by a top official of the government led by Keir Starmer. Starmer had earlier said that he looked forward to further deepening the strong and respectful relationship between both the countries. The Labour Party sees India as one of the largest players in the Indo-Pacific region. Its election manifesto did seek a new strategic partnership with India, including a free trade agreement, as well as deepening cooperation in areas like security, education, technology and climate change, which will also be the highlight of Lammy's visit.
Also, the British Indian population of 1.8 million people constitutes Britain's largest ethnic minority population. The Indian diaspora has strong links with India and are portrayed as the living bridge between the two countries. Lammy had recently emphasized this as a key factor of the bilateral relationship.
From New Delhi, Lammy will travel to the ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting in Laos, where he is expected to unveil new cooperation on climate and health. Dr. S. Jaishankar is also attending the Laos meeting.
This has been a priority from day one because of the desperate situation in Gaza and the Syria.
Well, drama continues to unfold over competitive entrance exams. The Supreme Court ruled on Tuesday that the NEET UG 2024 results will stand.
Right, and they've said that there will be no retest. A special bench, which was led by the Chief Justice of India, had found no evidence to prove that the entire exam was compromised. The ruling allows counselling and admissions for students to proceed as planned.
The Supreme Court decided against a retest, noting it would cause major disruptions for more than 2.4 million candidates who took the exam. During the hearing, Chief Justice Chandrachud highlighted the extensive investigation by the NTA, Union and CBI into the issue after several FIRs were filed. Petitions were also filed in the Supreme Court and High Courts following the June 4th announcement of the NEET UG results. These petitions called for the cancellation and retest of the May 5th exam due to the paper leak confirmed at the Hazaribagh Centre in Jharkhand.
Now, around 3,000 migrants are continuing with their journey to the United States on foot from a city in southern Mexico.
Well, undeterred by crackdown, over the past week, migrants have launched 2 caravans. The trek started last weekend as probably the last chance for many migrants to reach the border before November, amid fears of new restrictions if Republican Donald Trump wins the US presidential election. Republican candidate Donald Trump has said that if he returns to the White House, he will finish a wall along the US-Mexican border and carry out the largest deportation operation. He mentioned that this is one of the first things he's going to do on day one.
There is a lot of polemic because of Donald Trump's re-election to the presidency of the United States. But we put our faith in God and know that we'll receive our migration permits that will allow us to stay in the US as long as the American government allows us to.
The migrants, mostly from Venezuela and Central America, marched along a highway from Tapachula in Chiapas state near the Guatemalan border. Some of them complained of delays in receiving humanitarian visas from the immigration authorities that would allow them to traverse Mexico without being deported.
I ask the US government to give us an opportunity and asylum. We are not going to steal. We are going there to work. We are honest people with a dream. Remember, we are the driving force of the United States. The migrants do the hardest jobs in the US.
Thousands of migrants fleeing violence and poverty travel across Mexico every year for the US border. While some are paying smugglers to transport them in trucks, others join caravans enduring hunger, exhaustion and insecurity. The Mexican government has come under increased pressure from the United States to tackle the highly contentious issue of migration in an election year. China's lunar probe has found traces of water in samples of the moon's soil.
Now, the Chang'e 5 rover completed its mission in 2020, returning to Earth with rock and soil samples from the moon. In the Nature Astronomy journal published on Monday, the scientists have said that the lunar samples have revealed the presence of trace water.
Well, a NASA infrared detector had already confirmed the existence of water on the moon in 2020. Traces of water have also been found in recent analyses of samples dating from the 1960s and 1970s. But the Chang'e 5 samples are from a much higher altitude. Pardon me, they're from a much higher latitude. As per the scientists, they provide new clues as to what form water takes on the moon's surface. The scientists have said that according to the samples, water molecules can persist in sunlight areas of the moon in the form of hydrated salts.
Chang'e 5 was the world's first mission in 4 decades to collect samples from the moon. It came after Chang'e 4's historic first landing on the far side of the moon in 2019. And last month, the Chang'e 6 lunar probe completed its mission to collect the first samples from the far side of the moon as well.
China's space agency has made huge strides in the recent past. China is not just the first country to soft land twice on the far side of the moon. It is also the first nation to use a robotic probe, dig the moon's far side, collect samples and bring them back to Earth. In fact, by 2030, China hopes to land its astronauts on the moon as well. China is boosting efforts to catch up to space powers like the US and Russia.
All right, let's shift our focus now. Despite concerted efforts to reduce dependency, Russia remains a substantial supplier of natural gas to the European Union.
While pipeline gas deliveries have been significantly curtailed since the outbreak of the Ukraine war, LNG imports from Russia have surged.
In 2023, these imports constituted 16% of the EU's total LNG supply, a 40% increase compared to 2021. Data from the first quarter of 2024 shows that Russian LNG exports to Europe have risen again by 5% year-on-year. Countries such as France, Spain and Belgium have emerged as primary importers of Russian LNG, highlighting the complexity of EU's energy landscape.
While the Nord Stream pipelines are offline, Russian gas continues to flow into the EU via pipelines traversing Ukraine. Notably, Austria and Hungary have maintained a significant reliance on this supply route. Hungary and Slovakia had earlier voiced concerns over the halt of Russian oil deliveries from Lukoil after Ukraine banned transit through the route. In the latest, Hungary has blocked EU funds for member states until Ukraine allows Lukoil transit.
Meanwhile, Austria's gas imports from Russia reached 98% in December 2023. These nations hold long-term contracts with Gazprom, extending until 2040. Breaking these agreements would necessitate EU-wide sanctions on Russian gas, a measure that is yet to be implemented.
The EU has set an ambitious goal of eliminating Russian gas imports entirely by 2027. While progress has been made through the diversification of supply sources, challenges persist. Hungary's recent gas deal with Turkey, while ostensibly aimed at reducing reliance on Russia, is believed to ultimately channel Russian gas through the Turk Stream pipeline.
Meanwhile, Kyiv has indicated that it will not renew gas transit agreements with Russia beyond 2024, and this decision could significantly impact the flow of Russian gas to Europe, particularly to countries like Austria and Hungary. The interplay of these factors highlights the complexities in EU's energy strategy and the challenges it faces in achieving complete independence from Russian gas.
All right, next up, we now look at the surging fiscal deficit in the US. The common question, of course, is why is the US deficit so big?
The answer, it usually depends on whom you're asking. Democrats say it's the Trump-era tax cuts, while Republicans blame Biden's spending. The United States, it's on course to post its biggest budget deficit since the COVID-19 pandemic.
And of course, the global financial crisis and the Second World War to add to that. Republicans accuse Democrats of spending too much money, and Democrats counter that Republican tax cuts have reduced revenue. This adds fuel to the fire of the blame game in Washington during election year.
Now, according to predictions by the U.S. Office of Management and Budget, the deficit for the fiscal year ending on the 30th of September would hit about $1.9 trillion or 6.6% of the GDP. OMB predicts that government revenue will reach 17.6% of the GDP this year, up from 17.2% on average between 1984 and 2023.
However, total spending is expected to exceed the average by a much wider margin to 24.2%, 21.2% over the last 4 decades. Those numbers seem to back up the Republican claim that increased government spending is the root of the problem. However, a closer look reveals a more complicated picture. problems aren't stemming from the annual budget allocations for programs like food stamps, national parks, education and defense. The current budget's discretionary spending is expected to be 6.4% of GDP, which is lower than 7.5% average for the past 40 years.
Broadly speaking, there are two culprits here. That's the mandatory spending or so-called entitlements and the interest costs on the national debt. Mandatory expenditures are projected to reach 14.6% of the GDP, and that's 3 percentage points higher than the average for the past 4 decades. Meanwhile, due to higher interest rates, payments on the $27.8 trillion in public debt have increased dramatically. Rates paid by the government on treasuries have more than quadrupled to 3.3% since March 2022, when the Federal Reserve started hiking rates to fight inflation.
And next up, let's take a look at all the developments in technology. Italy's tax police have seized nearly $131 million from an Italian unit of e-commerce giant Amazon. According to prosecutors, this comes as part of an investigation into alleged tax fraud and illegal labor practices. The Milan prosecutor's office has accused Amazon, Italy's logistics unit, of bypassing labor and tax laws. As per officials, the unit used cooperatives and limited liability companies to supply workers to avoid VAT tax duties and reduce social security payments. This system has allegedly helped Amazon keep its prices competitive in the Italian market.
Google has decided to keep third-party cookies in its Chrome browser. This comes after years of Google pledging to phase them out. Advertisers have raised concerns that losing cookies would limit their ability to personalize advertisements and make them dependent on Google's user database. Cookies will help websites and advertisers track browsing habits, but can also be used for unwanted surveillance. As per a spokesperson, Google now plans to introduce a new experience in Chrome that will allow users to make an informed choice about their cookie preferences and adjust them at any time.
Chinese scientists have produced an ultra-thin semiconductor material. This development can lead to faster and more energy-efficient microchips. A team of Chinese researchers has developed a method to fabricate a semiconductor material just 0.7 nanometers thick. The research addresses a key barrier in reducing the size of traditional silicon-based chips. As devices shrink, silicon chips face physical limits that affect their performance. The scientists have explored an alternative to silicon, which is only 0.7 nanometers thick, compared to silicon's typical 5 to 10 nanometers. Now, this alternative consumes less power and is ideal for small-sized transistors in next-generation chips.